But what it's about, well, I'll let you speak. I'll let you hear the facilitator, DEanna, who works with Jim Ruff and Jean Ruff in Fort Townsend, and DEanna's from Seattle. And this model has come together, been demonstrated in a public environment, corporate environment, as a way to draw out people's voices. So DEanna, could you please speak a bit to the process of the Wisdom Council?
Yes. I think what I want to touch on, so I'm DEanna, I'm the director of the Center for Wise Democracy, and we are a nonprofit that helps communities do wisdom councils and generate collective wisdom in their communities. And what I want to touch on is related to what George said when he kind of read that statement. He talked about two things that I think are important to what the Wisdom Council is. One is healthy democracy, and two is decision makers. And so what the Wisdom Council is about is all of us, what we believe is that all of us ultimately are the decision makers for our democracy as a collective. But we don't really have a mechanism in place for us to check in with each other about how things are going and what we need to be working on collectively and generating our own agenda and our ideas for solving those problems. So that's where the healthy democracy part comes in. The Wisdom Council is this mechanism, an ongoing conversation that we generate ourselves about what's important to us. And I think the analogy that I'll use is that it's an immune system for our democracy. We're kind of dipping into the pool of the humanness of our society and randomly collecting a bunch of folks who have a unique perspective about the system that we're in. And by them sharing that unique perspective together, they come to some new understanding about how we're doing as a body, as the health of our democracy. So it allows us to check in about how things are going, figure out what we need to do, kind of put direction in certain places in our body as a healthy democracy. So that's really what the Wisdom Council is about. And we do that by every couple of months randomly selecting people from an area, having them get together for 2 days of facilitated conversation where they come up with the issues they want to address, and we help them generate unanimous statements about how those issues should be addressed or what those issues are. So what you're about to hear is this group of people's unanimous statement after spending 2 days together about what they talked about and what they came up with in the end. So with that, I'd like to, oh, sorry, Dan's going to say one more thing. So I'm going to pass it back to Dan, and he'll introduce them to share their statement.
So we've got the Victoria perspective, why we did this. We have a sense of the model that we're using. And an interesting thing about this model, it's not just Port Townsend and Victoria. I was on a conference call. There's somebody from Australia, somebody from California, and somebody from
Austria.
Yeah. There are people around the world watching what's going on here. They're very interested in what these people and the previous Wisdom Council members came up with. In fact, at that moment, who here in the room was in the original, the first Wisdom Council? There are some of you here. Okay, so we've got 4 people who've come back. Thank you. 4 people who've come back to see what's next. So it's really interesting. And so we started to talk about the ripples. That we were doing this little activity, and it was like throwing a little rock in the pond, and a ripple goes out, and then it hits what ripple that's coming from Port Townsend in Austria, and Australia, and there was somebody else in New Zealand, and then this person in California who was on the call saying, we're trying to get something going here, but we don't know how to do it. And she was listening and talked to us about what we were doing, and is now starting something there. So it's subtle and it's powerful at the same time. And one person who's doing a specific action around forwarding some of those ripples is John Spady. John, could you speak for a moment on the initiative that you're working on? Sure. So this is a specific application coming out of Seattle.
Thank you, Dan. And then we'll give it to you. Thank you. Good evening. Again, my name is John Spady. I'm the Executive Vice President of the Forum Foundation from Seattle, Washington. I've been working on and off with DEanna Martin and Jim Ruff for a little while. And it struck me that a lot of the process that they're going through and the output that they produce is exactly the input that I want for what we're doing with the Forum Foundation. Forum Foundation was organized in 1970, roughly, in Seattle, Washington, as an educational research nonprofit organization. And we're interested in the dynamics that move organizations forward towards solving their needs and their collective desires. We're doing that with a dialogue feedback system that is culminating now in, after 40 years, 35, 40 years, with a new law that's been introduced to King County in Seattle called Initiative 24, and it is designed, if passed, it's not certain yet, but if passed, to enable the population of the King County area to engage in dialogue in small group discussions throughout the community about issues that are important to all of them. Meeting in homes and businesses, mosques and churches, or wherever you'd like to meet, in order to engage in dialogue. And the way we do that is that we take the statements, just like the statements that you'll hear tonight, and we allow people to come together and to talk about them and to engage in dialogue face-to-face, eyeball to eyeball, and then we ask them a series of questions. And you may hear a little bit more about this in the next day or so, but the Forum Foundation has produced a website with the statements that you'll hear tonight, and we're encouraging the greater Victoria area to engage in small group dialogue about these statements, and go to the website at wisedemocracy.com, or wisedemocracyvictoria.com. And so I'll leave you with that tonight. And one last thing is, if you'll take a look at easycitizeninvolvement.com, you'll find a little bit more about our initiative in Seattle. Thank you very much.
Thank you, John. How many nonprofit societies do you think there are in Canada? Anybody know the number?
30,000.
161,000
Oh my God.
nonprofit societies. 71,000 of those are charitable. People donate $10 billion a year to charity. And I don't know how many hours, there's a number on the number of hours that people donate. There are people everywhere doing something. How many of you volunteer or have volunteered for something? All right, if I were to you, everybody does a little piece. And then there's something going on where those initiatives are starting to get connected together and have some amplification. So it's very exciting what's going on out there. We're all part of that. These folks have been sitting here patiently. You're wondering what they have on their minds. This is an opportunity for the people who spend a day with DEanna in the facilitated conversation to share what their experience is. So we'll start with maybe a minute each of what your experience was, what's top of mind for you at this point, and then is someone going to be reading the statement?
We're all reading the statement.
Okay. So however you're going to do that part.
Hey,
So-
Dan, can I make a suggestion? Maybe they could read the statement and then talk about the experience, or you want to do it the other way around?
It could go either way. So it sounds like you're ready to read the statement first. Is that sure? Yeah. All right. So
I just prepared them to do it that way.
Right. Okay. They're ready for this. Here's this part.